Welcome to MySecurity TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. Slight change to our schedule today, so I'm a little bit rattled, and now I've just put myself off mute, so now you should be able to hear me. That's very good. We're going to go for about 30 to 40 minutes today. We're going to be focused on cybersecurity and the Australian sector and some recent announcements out from the government. Our panel today, we're going to run a panel session and just making that look good. We've got Claire Pales, Director, 27 Lanterns, Abbas Kudrati, APAC Lead Chief Cybersecurity Advisor with Microsoft, and Nick Savides, Senior Director for APAC with ForcePoint. We're going to have them on briefly, and our scheduled change, and we wish Joseph Thaler from Accenture well. Unfortunately, he had a personal issue arise, which was quite urgent, so we wish him the best. Now, what I'm going to do is still walk through our slides. Our recent episode with Jeff Schomburg and Kurt Hansen is now available on MySec TV, where we talked about APRA and the cybersecurity strategy, and hence bringing on sort of a panel discussion following Jeff and Kurt, just on the general sort of feeling on how 2020 was. And the government, a lot of government announcements this year, and then also the announcement that they're going to have a new cybersecurity position, a ministerial position in Cabinet. So we'll hear from them shortly. Just a quick update on what we're doing. Next Wednesday, we've got Malaysia's National Telecom Cybersecurity with the CEO from Cybersecurity Malaysia, Dato Amarudin, and just this morning provided some details on the top 10 women in Malaysia in security competition. So that's going to be announced formally on December the 17th, just finalising the time and the schedule for that one. Next week, Shemaine Tan on the 10th with Blackout series and the cyber risk meetups with Jeff Tohill. So check that out. That's next Thursday. And then also Monday week, we're doing an Active Directory focused session with Alcid and Trustwave, Kevin Tran and Ben Moody there with some live demo attacks. We'll keep you posted on that. Yeah, we're hitting quite a good audience for that, and that's a registered only audience. It won't be live, so please register with that if you just go to mysec.tv. Just released this week an interview with CyberArk and Thomas Fickenshire, their regional director. That's now available both on podcast and on a TV episode. So we talk about, obviously, identity is the new security. Identity is the new perimeter, but focused on identity security. And then on Chief IT, we released the data center and PC market trends with Lenovo. And I sort of pulled out from Daniel and Samar just on how Lenovo handled 2020, particularly being a market leader in the PC and DC sector, and how they handled sort of their supply chains. And there's a few takeaways in that particular interview. Also released after embargo, I interviewed Atif Khan, who's in San Jose. They've just raised $74 million, Alkira. They've been in stealth mode for 2 years, and they've just released their what they're calling as a cloud backbone as a service model, the CBAAS. Quite an interesting, this is Atif Khan and his brother, who's the CEO. This is their second run. So their first company sold to Cisco. And again, that goes, he gives us a walkthrough of what their cloud platform is, and quite an interesting piece of technology. And just this morning, I'll just throw it up there. I just did an interview with Milestone and at their Experience Centre in Melbourne, Brett and Mike there. That'll be out very shortly, probably next week, just in terms of the video management and surveillance sector and what they're doing in the COVID-19 environment also. And just going to mix it up next week. I'm doing a session with Chris Flaherty on laser weapons. We'll see what Chris has done a recent paper on that. Just get a sense of where that technology's at. And I've got Dan Ehrenreich from Israel, and I want to get him to walk through the Israel sewage treatment cyber attack and also the water plant attack that happened earlier this year. So definitely having a look at SCADA, OT security, and some of the issues around that. So that should be next week. And on next week, I mentioned the Blackout series with Shemaine. There's a few other events. ISACA Privacy and Practice Conference is on, also on Wednesday, and a couple others. The Nice Cybersecurity Education Conference and the European Mining Convention is also on. and you can grab your Cyber Risk Letters magazine. Now, unfortunately, Joseph couldn't join us today. We did a three-part podcast series with Accenture, so it was good to have the opportunity of catching up with Joseph. So those will be in the show notes, looking at the Australian cybersecurity environment and also that IT and OT attack surface. And what we were going to discuss, I'll still put this in the show notes, is Accenture's recent report on cloud for mining and just the trends. About 85% of mining and metals companies have adopted cloud in some form, but they're still falling short. So that was hopefully what we were going to talk about, but you can still access that report in the show notes. And then also the Accenture 2020 Cyber Threatscape report was also out, in those 5 frontline trends. So again, I'll include these in the show notes so you can check that out. They're both available on the marketplace otherwise for download. Now, I'm going to bring on our panel, and this follows, again, our interest in what we've been doing. We did interview Abigail Bradshaw, the head of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and we also interviewed Tim Watts, the Shadow Assistant Minister for Cybersecurity. And so, again, these are in relevance, episodes 221 and 225, only just a couple of months ago. But again, they put this in the context of what we're going to talk about. So what I should be able to do is I'm going to bring in Nick and Claire. Okay, it's working. Abbas. And I'll get rid of my notes. And there we go. Lovely. Okay, you can all hear me?
Good afternoon, guys.
Thank you. Claire, you're a little bit out of focus. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know if it's just your stream, but it might just be my stream here as well.
Looks like.
Yeah, okay. So look, Claire, 27 Lanterns. Maybe if you could introduce, most of the audience will be aware of your podcast and what the work that you do. You're in Melbourne. And we've also got your podcast on the marketplace as well. We're doing a little pot of podcasts, so you're definitely there. Maybe your take. I got a sort of a release from your end on commentary around sort of a new ministerial position with government for cybersecurity. What is this, good or bad or well needed, or we shouldn't be waiting for it in the first place? We shouldn't have lost one in 2018. You're on mute.
Yeah. Look, thanks so much, Chris, for having me. And yes, thank you also for having my podcast, The Secure CIO, on your marketplace.
Right.
Look, in terms of the announcement, I think it probably couldn't have come soon enough. And as you alluded to, back in 2018, the role of a minister in this area did disappear. But I think in the lead up to now, where we've seen the cybersecurity strategy for 2020 handed out and a much stronger focus on cybersecurity from a government perspective, it makes a lot of sense now to have this ministerial focus. I think there's a real leadership role to be played here. And, as an organisation, my business looks at cybersecurity from a leadership perspective and how we get the right capabilities into these roles. And for the government to be looking at this now, I think as an industry, we'll really be watching as to who this portfolio is handed to and the leadership that they take on and the understanding of this responsibility that they take on.
Yeah.
From a strategic perspective, obviously there's a group of people who are in place, a committee that's in place to make sure the cybersecurity strategy gets rolled out effectively and is supported by industry. But the government's really going to be taking on a role of investment, and the cyber leader or the cyber minister will really be setting the tone, I think, from the country's perspective, in the same way that we've seen across 2020 a need for boards to be starting to set the tone for organisations. And that's certainly been a trend that's starting to come through both in the strategy and in some of the regulation and as you talked about with APRA in your previous Cyber TV post as well.
Yeah, I think leadership is a real key there, and that's going to be a challenge. There's certainly room for criticism, but again, it's good to see that the government's maybe getting back on track. They've released a lot of announcements this year. Maybe we'll before we go to Abbas, Nick, your view and maybe a bit of a background on Force Point, where you guys fit in the market, how big you are? Because obviously Abbas with Microsoft, we know Abbas, but Abbas will talk also from a CISO perspective as well, I imagine.
Yeah, sure.
So Nick, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and hello to everyone watching, and thanks for having me on, Chris. I guess from a ForcePoint perspective, ForcePoint is a company that has existed for a long time in different forms in the last 4 years as ForcePoint, and really focuses on understanding human behavior, sort of behavioral analytics, and driving cybersecurity from a behavior approach. So shifting cybersecurity away from the feeds and speeds and the myriad of tools that we have. Right, we have so many tools, and really making it about people and understanding what they are doing and their intent and securing it that way. So my job, I joined the organization in March to run the strategic business. So I have what I describe as the best job. I get to think about the future and tell other people what we should be building. And I have none of the accountability if my predictions don't come out right. So I have a great job here.
Sounds like you'd be ideal for the ministerial position. I imagine that's what the minister's going to be doing.
I was kind of trying to make a bit of a connection there, right? Because I think there's a lot of that comes into this. There is room for criticism. It would have been great for this role to have existed earlier and not have been disbanded. But this year has really shown how quickly government can pivot. And we often talk about how slowly government moves. But I have never seen in my time government change direction and be so flexible and adaptive to the changing surrounds. And it's not just our government; it's governments across the world who, they were faced with an existential threat and really changed the way that they approach things. And from a technology perspective, that's very true. All the viewers would be thinking, what was impossible at the start of the year became possible by March, right? You couldn't imagine having such a large workforce at home. Oh, you can't access these resources, but you need to go through the VPN. You need all these tools and protection. All of a sudden, it was like, do whatever you need to, just keep the business operating. And I feel like the government is kind of in that position where it's finally gone, we have to do something here. And they were doing things. ACSC has done some great work. And the cybersecurity strategy, when it came out, I know you featured this before, a lot of criticism was labeled saying, well, it's not a strategy for everyone. It's a strategy just for ACSC, considering that's where most of the funding was going. But as we've seen in the execution, much broader involvement with industry, real consultation. Who thought that would happen, right?
Yeah.
Real consultation.
I think there's a lot more consultation to go. And I think the more that the government, the agencies were talking about cybersecurity up until the Prime Minister on June 19th or the 16th, in terms of the major attack announcement, I think they realised, hang on, we don't actually have an ongoing spokesperson at a ministerial level for cybersecurity. It's either defence or Home Affairs. Abbas, just maybe on the clever way that this announcement was made, it's kind of just subtly put out there. It sort of avoided that recognition that this position has been required for a while. Again, your view on how this sets up for 2021 and cyber, and there's obviously a major sort of campaign out of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre now. I can't think what it is. I didn't publish the release. It was Act Now or something like that. So, yeah, just your view on this generally.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. And absolutely, I agree with all the points which Claire and Nick has made in their commentary. This was a much-needed position. First of all, I was really be taken away when the position had gone out. It should not have gone out, in all means. That's what I believe. But I'm so glad that it is now back on the agenda, because I believe that cybersecurity is a leadership thing as well. It has to be driven from a top down. And we saw a fantastic strategy which has come up, of course, with a pinch of a criticism, but it is something which not every country has today. If you look around in our neighboring country within Asia and extended. So we have something to drive through, and it requires at that kind of a leadership level who can make sure work along with industry partners and vendors, Forcepoint, Microsoft, AWS, we can name it anyone, to work along and executing those strategies. 2020 has been a tough year. We have never seen that the world could go completely work from home, as Nick said, and people had been firing all the tools and technology to be productive, either good or bad, and that has significantly increased the cyber attack around the world, not only in Australia. We had seen government organization being targeted in Australia. If I give examples of that itself, in New South Wales, we saw big manufacturing industry. We saw tech industry or tech organizations had been targeted. Number of data has been breached. We saw denial of service attack. I mean, adversaries are taking advantage of whatever they can to impact the economy, to impact the organizations. We had seen almost 18,000 different variants of a phishing email during COVID peak period, which was around February, March till June, July. Every day, the adversaries are changing their techniques just to get hold of the information and just to cripple the economy. So the move, when I saw that Scott Morrison and have they announced something leadership role is coming up, that is very, very positive side, I would say.
Very good. And how are you finding, because we've got next year, you mentioned the COVID-19 sort of phishing and attacks that we saw. It came up with Jacqueline Jane last week or the week before, in terms of now we've got the vaccines coming out. So there's a whole new vector of keyword attacks that are going to be coming through. And there's more than one vaccine too, so you're not going to know which email to open up.
Yeah.
How can you maybe give us a bit of background as to how maybe a company like Microsoft might be working towards that now, say in 365, and how you might be sort of mitigating that?
Absolutely. So we are already picking up the example I gave you of 18,000. That comes from our threat intel sources, because we see what kind of keywords are being used, especially when they send phishing email. And the spam and phishing email graph is just shooting up. You can't even catch hold of that. So we are already seeing that kind of a threat. And if you must have seen, we released a specific threat intel on COVID-19 a couple of months back, and we made it public so everyone can take advantage of those kind of threat intel. Second thing, we see that work from home is not going to go away. Now that people are getting comfortable adapting this new normal, as we call it, we are going to see that employees are going to demand they want to work from. And that goes with public sector as well. I was talking to a couple of friends in public sector within New South Wales and Victoria. They mentioned that they are going to get an option to work for a couple of days from home, or to work somewhere near to their location. Maybe they don't need to come to city all the way. They might open up with a public-private partnership, some kind of a joint center where they can work together. That really challenges the security. How are they going to manage security in a place where not everyone have the luxury of giving those security control back to the employee within their own tool set, what they're using it. So it is going to bring some kind of a challenge as well. And that is where government has to working like Joint Cybersecurity Center, JCSC comes into play, ACSC, Department of Defense, and ASC. All those things all these organizations are working hand on hand, so they can help the mass public, not only organizations but also individuals, to uplift their security in that.
It's an interesting structure at a government level on that. You just mentioned, sort of rattled off half a dozen. Then you've got the joint cybersecurity centers that are kind of the outreach. Claire, I suppose you're a sort of CISO advisor and probably a micro advisor. You know, you're not a sort of a vendor approach. How have you found sort of the business impact from you this year, and I suppose the announcements from government, even say this campaign, you know, go to cyber.gov.au. Does that impact or assist you as a business or advisor? I'll come back to you, Nick, as well from a vendor perspective, but I suppose from an advisor, does it undermine your message at all, or is it something that you'd use as a tool? How do you come to approach that? And what government's doing, and once the minister does come out, they're going to be making much more announcements. They're going to be very loud, and it almost takes away a lot of the sort of that local advisory advice that you actually give. Is it undermining that?
No, I think what it's actually doing is highlighting for organisations the importance of cyber. And by the government coming out and talking about it, it has created many more conversations across organisations, both at the top levels, as I spoke about earlier at the board, but also amongst CEOs and amongst peer groups. So CIOs that are getting together are talking about it as well. And CISOs can really use these announcements as an opportunity to start conversations about cybersecurity within their organisations. You never waste these opportunities for the sound bites that you get from the government, but at the same time, making sure that as an advisor, I'm filling in the blanks for organisations where they might read something in the press or they might see something in the news, and trying to understand how that's relevant or contextual for their organisation. So yes, the websites of the government are crucial for uplifting knowledge, but having an organisation understand how that's contextual for them is absolutely key, because the leaders in the organisation can only make decisions based on what's relevant and valuable for them. But these government announcements certainly start a conversation that otherwise may have been more difficult to be had.
Yeah. And Nick, from a vendor perspective, how do you find that?
Yeah, I think Claire's really accurate there. I think that our customers really benefit from this, both in the private sector, right? How this crosses over into the private sector, because it gives the organizations that have been lagging in cybersecurity the ability to show that there is external focus from the government. This is serious. We must take it seriously, and do more with it. There's not every organization, and I see this a lot. I mean, I deal with a lot of customers. A lot of them are in that leading space. That cybersecurity is part of the business. It's engaged at the board. It's engaged at the C-suite. They understand it because they know they're a technology business. And yet I meet others and I talk to the CISO and they're like, I can't get any, I report to the CIO. Cybersecurity is still just the thing that we kind of have to do. And I'm the unwanted child, right? I'm not the one who's welcome at meetings. And that is a shame. And I think this really helps in preventing that, changing that attitude. We were on that path anyway. This accelerates it. And from a vendor's perspective, it is very good to see the government taking it so seriously for that reason, because we can have that conversation with organizations. And as an organization that deals typically with complex cybersecurity issues, organizations that are doing network transformation, that are doing, they want to move into the conduct risk and insider threat spaces. We see how that works across lots of companies. And we are a vendor is in a unique position to provide shared knowledge in areas where people may not be comfortable sharing with, because you are exposed to it. And I think this announcement with the role and the focus, because, as you said, Chris, once a minister is appointed, they have to have something to talk about, right? Their mission is to talk, and they will find things to talk about. So we have to, as an industry, capitalize on it, right?
I think I was literally about to move into that communication space. You're absolutely right. The minister, whoever he or she may be, is really going to have to be a good communicator. And Abbas, I was going to come to you in terms of the role of the CISO, because it's almost a CISO role sort of up at a government level. Just the importance of communication. They can't have someone in there who can't be articulate and confident. And you don't have to be technically minded, but you have to understand sort of the technical and the threat landscape as well, but the technical applications as well. How important is that communication in this particular role? And There's a question there. I don't know if anyone here can answer it in terms of, can you identify anyone who would actually have that in the current ministerial lineup? Yeah, your view on the importance of communication.
Yep, absolutely. I'll give you my view on that. But one thing I want to cover, which I picked up from Nick and Claire, about communication as well as engagement. Now, if you look at Australian economy, 75% of them are small and medium organizations.
Yeah.
And you look at the other flip side, how many organizations have a so-called CISO title? You can count them on fingers, right? The help required is mostly on those small and medium enterprise organizations who cannot first afford to have a CISO. That's where people like Claire come into picture, who can have a multiple role in the organization as a virtual CISO. And we have seen those virtual CISO picking up a bit of an advantage for those kind of company. Second, they don't have that kind of a knowledge and a know-how. And that is where the cyber.gov.au kind of a portal helps them in passing that message which they collect from various threat intel, as you said, Chris, from Microsoft or in Forcepoint and many other large organizations who have that kind of a data point for them to take it and go back and educate those small, medium, and large organizations, including bigger one. They can get this kind of a intel and have a talking point with their board management. This is what government is saying. Yeah. According to me, the most successful framework so far I have seen is Essential 8. That has been a huge success.
Yeah.
Very easy to translate, just 8 points which can really improve your cybersecurity posture. Not 115 control of ISO 27001, not 1050 control of NIST 853. We are talking about only 8 points. Where did it come from, right? So something like this, which can really help those small, medium, and organizations to take point. Hey guys, assess yourself from those 8 control first. Then let's talk about something else.
Yeah,
this is what we want to achieve through those strategy which organizations have created or Australia has created. This is what you want to achieve from the portal communication side. This is what you want to achieve from the leadership who's going to come into that picture. Give something bite size to take it and step by step take it to the next level. You know.
But Abbas, do you think anyone's actually done application whitelisting properly?
That's the most painful control out of all.
It is, and everyone brings that up out of the Essential 8. It's the first thing that's brought up. But I think the other one was, Claire, in terms of that message as well, you know, the ACSC is trying to now, they've broken it down to business, government, and then consumer and small business as well. So you got large and then you got small. Is that about right? And as Abbas mentioned, 75% of the Australian economy is small to medium, and they don't have CISOs. You definitely would have seen it this year in terms of the virtual CISO sort of roundtables. We've been running them. I know a few others have as well. That's been really good. The CISOs have probably, you know, other than taking them out to a lunch and getting them around that round table, and Abbas, I remember a visit down to Melbourne, it's easier, and they do want it. There's a lot to talk about from a CISO perspective. I haven't seen a lot being talking about with IT security managers or, you know, even system admins, where sort of the CISO sort of started to emerge from. Have you seen much around that level in terms of engagement at that small to medium-sized business level? I can't say I have.
Yeah, look, it's a hard one because it's absolutely a two-way street. So the government can put out communications about cyber, but organisations have to want to learn and understand their risk exposure and also, you know, the critical information assets that they need to protect, which I guess as an industry, we know that's 101, but small businesses, when they start up, most of them are technicians who are brilliant at what they do and they want to serve lots of people, and so they start a business, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand the risks that they're exposed to from a cybersecurity perspective. And this is not a sponsored post, but Cinch Security do an amazing job for small to medium businesses of helping them to understand their risk posture and you know, their cyber fitness. And I know they're doing a great job, but it's awareness and understanding that you've even got a problem. You know, I think that's where small businesses are possibly struggling. Where I tend to operate in sort of the mid-tier, a lot of the time I come into an organisation, I've worked a lot in financial services where, because of what APRA is doing, organisations are forced into really thinking about, okay, we've had tactical, technical controls for a period of time. We really need to start to think strategically about how we're going to secure our organisation and reduce risk into the future. So for Fin Services, that's been a couple of years of solid journey for them, and it will continue. And critical infrastructure, I think, is next. And so as a mid-size, they are being thrown these regulatory controls that they now need to appease and abide by. Small and the next size up of organisations, it's a really tough market because it's convincing them that they've got a problem to begin with, and that there are ways to address it that can be cost effective. It doesn't have to be expensive to put controls in place. It's just an education. Sorry, Nick, did you want to jump in there?
No, I was just nodding furiously in agreement with you there, Claire. I think the small business problem is a really hard one to tackle, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, the government can put out material. We put out material. We provide free advice, right? You can go to the website and do that. A lot of vendors do. There's industry associations and whatnot, and yet we still see small businesses completely cyber unaware. And that's hard. It's a really hard problem to solve. And I think that there would be a better focus getting security, I guess, brought in at the admin level back to, because, it's become its own practice. Cybersecurity is its own practice now. And it's moved away from, back when before my beard was so salty, and it was network security, right? It was network and system security. I think we have to go back a little bit that way and really push it into that sysadmin, network admin understanding of the overall risks, because I think that's been lost a little bit as cybersecurity has become a practice, as it's matured as an industry. That obviously happens. So I think we need to go back a little bit to do that, maybe through industry associations and professional bodies to do something like that. And from an IT landscape, most small businesses are delivering getting their compute services from the reseller or partner down the road, right? They're not cybersecurity experts. They're not network experts. They might have a person who's done a couple of certifications, and that's where they're really dependent on their upstream suppliers, organizations like ForcePoint, like Microsoft, and others who are producing the tools and technologies that they use. And I think we have to make an effort to make cybersecurity tools easy to use. And I'll give you a personal example, and I don't want to talk too much about ForcePoint, but I joined this company and we had this insider threat technology that was built for banks and departments of defense. And you can't take that and scale it down and give it to, a place that's got 50 or 25 users without reimagining it completely. And that's where I've been spending my last 8 months at this place, trying to bring that capability, cloudifying it, getting into it, that next phase where we can make cybersecurity a little bit more accessible. The advanced things that big organizations can depend on, bringing them down so that they are consumable by small businesses. Because like you said, those budgets, they don't have to be expensive. You don't have to have big budgets. You just have to be able to wield the technology. And if the technology is scalable down, you're in a much better position.
I think as long as it's integrated into the business as well, because of that 75% of every business is different size, different people. I think, companies like Microsoft are probably, need to lead the way, and you've done quite well. It's probably not in the pedigree, but it's certainly changed over the last sort of 10 years or so. That's leading there. And I think just looking at the panel here, you've got sort of, as you said, Claire, mid-tier advisors, mid-tier vendor, and then you've got the large multinational. So we kind of do cover that. And I think that's how we're going to have to adapt it. I think there's a danger, though, of segmenting the message. Government will probably, and we're talking federal government, so it's a big beast. It's a complex area. I know that they're well intentioned, but they will end up talking about law enforcement, national security, and then also the critical infrastructure. And I know that they've deployed their joint cybersecurity centres at the state level and even some regional levels now up in Queensland. Again, well-intentioned, but still a difficult thing to do unless they start to really engage. And I'm not actually seeing that at the joint cybersecurity centres, unless I'm missing something. Claire, have you actually reached out? I've signed up to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre and sort of their portal, and you start to get their announcements. Although the only announcements I've had is about their campaign. So I think how much of engagement, and we might finish off on this, of how much engagement are you seeing at a local level through the joint cybersecurity, other than maybe just a talk fest at a sort of a session? Things like workshops, small, specific, granular, what is your business, and this is what cybersecurity means to your business, not a small business, because there's too many types of small business. Yeah, what's the level of engagement that you're seeing, and maybe think that areas of improvement?
I think, well, obviously with COVID, that's had a pretty big impact on people who would engage with the cybersecurity centres, the Joint Cybersecurity Centre or the Australian one, physically in person. That's been practically impossible here in Victoria. So this year is hard to speak about. But in previous years, I've certainly seen and been to events where the room is full of people who are thirsty for that information. They want to hear the experts speak. They want to engage. And, from CISO peers of mine that I talk to, many of them get a lot of value out of being part of that community. Whether or not everybody gets that, I can't say. But those that I do speak to and the events that I've been to have been very good. And I know that the people I've met who run these centres across Australia, I think I've met 3 or 4 of the leaders who are actually operating the centres. Their heart is absolutely in the right place, and they're trying to open up these centres and have people there present all the time that can help organisations when they want to go and seek that help. I sort of stand by my comment from earlier, and that is that organisations have to want the help as well. It's absolutely a two-way street. It can't just be the government and the joint cybersecurity centres pushing content out all the time. There's got to be a desire within organisations for to draw information in and understand how they can utilise that in their own businesses.
Unfortunately, with security, it's always after the event, though. It's after the break-in they put the alarm in. It's after the breach that they go, okay, we'll start using ForcePoint or Microsoft products. Closing comments, Nick, and then we'll close off with Abbas.
Well, look, what I'll say is back to the original topic. I welcome this decision. I think it's good. It's good for the industry. It's good for the country to have some leadership around this. And I think it really demonstrates that cybersecurity is a true problem that all businesses face and must address. Every business today, no matter how big or small, is a technology business. From your largest business to your smallest business, technology enables that to work. And cybersecurity is what keeps that technology operating and trustworthy. And this role provides that recognition at the federal government level. It's important for everyone to recognise that. And as Claire said, organisations need to want the help so that they can get it, right? And they need to want to mature their cybersecurity practices. And that is something that I think overall it's a good first step. I'm keenly awaiting to see what happens next.
Well, part of my motivation here is to obviously put the sort of invitation out early to whoever gets the role to come on. Claire, I imagine you do the same, get them on a podcast. They're going to have to do podcast after podcast, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. And I'd just add to what Nick said about, us keenly awaiting to see who is appointed. It's the sort of role that, they've got a really good shot at not giving lip service to this role and really selecting someone who is going to be a leader and invest not only financially, but invest in the opportunity to have this conversation ongoing. So, I'm like Nick, I'll certainly be waiting with bated breath and I'll race you to the podcast.
We might run a poll. We might do a poll of who should be nominated. Abbas, do you think it? Okay, maybe we'll close off on this one.
Yeah.
Do you think it should be a new minister, sort of fresh face, or do you kind of get a sense it might just be from the existing cohort?
So first of all, definitely support this movement. Second, I wish to see somebody who is a practitioner who can bring the change, rather than a politician. I would say somebody who understands the threats, or somebody who can dictate these things from all the way from the individual level to the business level. Because remember, COVID has taught us that it's not going to be a business issue. Cybersecurity is going to be an individual issue. We have to bring cybersecurity from organization to individual home, because that's what people will be spending time now, working from home in coming years. So let's focus on individual. Of course, organization is there, but now we have to secure individual and their home network as well. So it's going to be a very, very ground level, grassroots level issue now.
Very good. I wonder if it's going to maybe influence the states as well to start creating sort of ministerial positions at a state level. Most of them are starting to come out with their cybersecurity strategies. I know New South Wales does. And we did have Tim Watts on from the Shadow sort of ministry, and I think he talks with a bit of passion. So I think, the current government needs to sort of start to match that, particularly as we come into election mode as well next year as well. So definitely one to monitor. Well, look, we could talk about all this all day. I don't know how our live stream actually went, but we will release this as probably more of a podcast. And again, we wish Joseph well in terms of the changed agenda. But look, I've been joined by Claire Pales, Director, 27 Lanterns, and Claire, your podcast, the CIO.
The Secure CIO. Thanks, Chris.
Got it. I was going to call it Forum for some reason, but the Secure CIO podcast and 27 Lanterns there in Melbourne. Abbas Kudrati, the APAC Lead Chief Cybersecurity Advisor. Did I get that right? Lead Chief Cybersecurity Advisor?
Call me anything, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, you should have stuck to CISO, but at Microsoft. So thank you. It's great to have the big brand on. And Nick Savides, Senior Director APAC at ForcePoint. And Nick, I've just put out on the Australian Cybersecurity magazine site today will be sort of an opinion piece from you there as well. I got that
Thank you.
this morning. So that's been live. And I think I did one in the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine. So we'll have those links in there. For the panel, if you've got if you've got anything else that you want to sort of share out with any links, just fire them in an email to me and I'll put them in the show notes for you as well.
Thanks.
But thank you very much to the panel. Very interesting discussion and something to look forward to in 2021 on who gets the hot seat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I've got some closing slides that I'm just going to share out. Just 1 second. I've got literally, I don't know how live we were. We certainly didn't get a big audience on that one, but anyone who is actually listening, if they want to sort of make a quick comment now, the last of our Yubico 5CI clear. Otherwise, if you want to email me at promoteme@mysecuritymedia.com, first email in with a Yubico in the subject line. You'll get a free one of these. I think they're worth about, they're a limited edition, but worth about $75. So we'll give that away to the first person. So look, thank you so much. That is it from our show. And we'll be back on Tuesday with, I think about 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, looking at the regional cybersecurity strategies. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.